Welcome to a special pre-election night edition of Scherable. I'm your host, Bill Scher, and we're going to be doing some predictions tonight. My track record of specific electoral college predictions is not great. I'm not here to tell you that I have super secret special knowledge. I don't have troves of data that you don't get to see. I don't have a network of contacts on the ground in the battleground states to give me that extra bit of intelligence that you don't get. I'm simply doing this for entertainment purposes only, and just going to walk you through, why I'm thinking what I'm thinking, with no expectation that it is going to be on the nose. You might have seen that I have already wrote my column for Real Clear Politics, where I say flat out that Biden's going to win. I stand by that. I think if it not for 2016, a whole bunch more people would be saying that based on the data that we have. So I don't think it makes me at all special that I am saying it. Just folks are a little I have a little PTSD, and I think a lot of folks in the media have been chastened and are worried that by putting forth too many seemingly certain predictions, they might affect turnout. And I sympathize with that. I don't think I'm going to cause that problem by my lonesome. When you get into specific electoral college predictions, in this particular case, it is certainly harder than just saying Biden's going to win, because we have a lot of states with polling averages that are very, very tight. In my mind, Wisconsin and Michigan are practically locks. If I don't have all the data right in front of me, but I think at 538, the averages were in the 6, 7, 8 range. There's been a divergence in the past 48 hours. I mean, Real Clear Politics averages have always been, I think, mostly been a little bit behind 538 because they don't do adjustments on those Republican-leaning pollsters like Trafalgar and Insider Advantage and Rasmussen, and Susquehanna seems to be coming in with a Republican lean this year. And we're seeing a bunch of those come in late. So there've been some times when 538 and Real Clear have actually converged. We're seeing a pretty significant divergence in these last couple of days, and I'm a little hesitant to give that much weight to those last minute pollsters. I actually kind of like I like not having the adjustments in general. I like the raw data myself, and I also like having it unadjusted for the final days. I think it picks up momentum better to not do the artificial adjustments. But when you're having this many right-leaning pollsters coming in at the very, very end, that's making me pause, and now I'm looking more at the 538 averages. So Wisconsin, Michigan seem like practically locks, and Pennsylvania just slightly under that. It was 4.9 in the 538 average, and to be up by 5 points, 5 points with no significant momentum from the underdog. People can point to Trump in 2016 really overperforming particularly in Michigan and Wisconsin. Michigan, he landed in the Real Clear Politics average at 3.6 and won by a hair. Wisconsin was even bigger, but Wisconsin did not have any polls in the last week, so you had no sense of what kind of momentum he was gathering in Wisconsin. So I think it's certainly possible to beat polls and beat them by a significant amount, but I would want to see some really dramatic movement in his direction before thinking that was going to happen. And I'm not seeing that in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. So those to me seem like very safe picks to say for Biden, and that in and of itself gets you over the 270 mark. After that, once you get down to Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, 2nd District, Congressional District of Maine, Texas, now you're talking about states where Biden's lead is pretty small, I think generally less than 3, or in some cases a little behind, like in Iowa and I think Ohio and Texas. And these numbers have been moving a little bit in the last several hours, so forgive me if I'm not fully up to speed on where it is in this precise moment. So once you get into predicting at this stage of the game, it really comes, you can do three things. You can just take the averages and just place your bets there. Or now that we have these forecasts, I can go to the 538 forecast or the economist forecast or some of the other forecasts that are out there and just take their forecast. Or I can say maybe there's going to be overperformance or underperformance. There's going to be an extra shot of turnout on one side and some depression on the other side. And that's where it just comes down to a lot of guessing. I mean, you can look at momentum in polls to try to determine that. You can look for enthusiasm in polls or crowd sizes, some would do. I wouldn't do that myself. I know some people like to do that. And otherwise, or you can talk about people's ground games. Who's got the better ground game? There's always ground game trash talk going on. And all those indicators to me are always kind of fuzzy and full of spin. Even if I had a network of operatives feeding me information, I'm not sure how much trust I would put into it. People would be telling me honest things, I assume, but people's perspectives are always limited in that respect. So I'm an optimistic sort. I tend to overshoot in my predictions at this stage of the game. So you should take whatever I have to say with a grain of salt. In fact, I'm going to try to do two sets here. I'm going to try to do what I will treat as my prediction, my gut prediction, which will be optimistic, but then I'll go through what I think is a more conservative, pessimistic one. So I do think that there is a good chance that the Democratic turnout is going to be above the baseline, and that there will be some Republican, maybe not depression, because with the push towards mail voting and early voting, all indications are we're going to outdo turnout from last time. And so you're pulling in more new voters and unlikely voters to some extent on both sides. And so I don't know how many people who voted for Trump in 2016 who will just not vote at all because it's been so easy to do so up until this point. Maybe there'll be some. I just don't want to presume it. But I do think it is possible that Democrats will pull in more new and unlikely voters than Trump will pull in more new and unlikely voters. And so if that is the case, then you'll feel safer. And I do feel safer saying, he's got a 2 to 3 point lead in Arizona. He's going to keep that. He's got a 1 point lead in Florida. He's going to keep that. He's got an edge in North Carolina and Georgia. They're very slight, but he'll keep those. I'm even willing to go as far, even though the numbers don't look as promising there, that he's going to pick up Iowa. And I say that because I'm clinging to the point that I've been making for some time now, that the Iowa House popular vote was Democratic in 2018. Even though the race has tightened, Teresa Greenfield has been doing well most of the race. My understanding is that some folks are not happy with the Republican governor there and her response to coronavirus. So my optimistic gut prediction is he ekes out Iowa. So I'm basically going to give Biden almost everything on the map, including Nebraska 2, including Maine 2. But I won't give Biden Ohio and Texas. I feel those have been, as wonderful as Texas would be, and people could legitimately argue, man, that early vote in Texas is fantastic. That has to mean that new voters who have moved into the state and young voters and suburban voters moving away from Trump, that all must be coming together to juice this early vote. And look, there was a pretty big swing between 2012 and 2016 in Texas. It went from Obama minus 16 to Clinton minus 9 in a 4-year period in a race that Clinton lost. So it's not ludicrous to think that this will be the year, but not having seen any Biden leads in the averages up until this point, and I'm already being pretty optimistic in other respects. That's why I'm not jumping to make that pick right now. And Ohio has been, slight Trump a good deal of the way, and so I'm reluctant, and that's also a state where I see less evidence of blue trending. 2018 House popular vote was Republican in 2018. Mike DeWine, to the extent that DeWine has critics in Ohio, it's from the far right. It's not from the left so much regarding his coronavirus response. So I'm not there on Ohio. So that leaves Biden with 357 electoral votes. That's why I will call my prediction with the understanding that it is my gut optimistic prediction. So 357 Biden, 181 Trump. If I was going to be more pessimistic, if I was going to remove my optimistic nature and I was going to be more coldly clinical about what data is out there, I would say, North Carolina is tightening at the end, and Georgia, Biden's actually moving up a bit in Georgia, but it's still very tight. And Georgia has been a bit of a white whale. In Arizona, Biden's got a slight lead, but it has been tightening in that state. And as I already said, Iowa, we already know Iowa's been tightening and is a bit lean Trump at this point. So I'd probably take all those off. I think I would still, even in my most pessimistic moments, I would keep Florida. Biden has held that lead there. And one thing that I keep coming back to, and this may well be oversimplistic on my part, but Clinton only lost Florida by 1.2 points. It was one. I mean, when you look at how close things were, I mean, Michigan was, excuse me here. Michigan, Trump won by 0.23 percentage points. Wisconsin was 0.72. Pennsylvania was 0.72 points, and Wisconsin was 0.77 points. 3 states within 1 percentage point, and all those looking very favorable to Biden right now. The next one after that is Florida at 1.2, and we haven't seen Florida be showing as big of a swing as the other 3. We are seeing nationally a big swing towards Biden. We see polling in states that aren't being contested, like West Virginia, like Missouri, where Biden's going to lose, but he's doing markedly better than Hillary did. So I feel like the swing towards Biden is national. It's not like red America is going one way and blue America is going the other way. There's a general shift in Biden's direction. And I have to think that making up 1.2 percentage points, even in Florida, I know it's Florida. Florida's always tight. It was tight in 2012, and it was tight in 2008. Obama only won it by 2.8 percentage points in 2008. And that was a pretty big year for Obama. So I still would put that in Biden's camp. And that's why one of my extra predictions is I think either Florida, North Carolina, or Georgia will be called in Biden's favor by midnight tomorrow night. Trump won it by 1.2, and Florida was called at 10:50 p.m. Eastern time 4 years ago. Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia all count early, and we should know. So even if it's kind of close, those states can be called. I mean, if it's a serious nail biter, 2,000 Bush v. Gore nail biter, a few hundred votes, then it's not going to be called. But I think Biden can win Florida by a point and have that be called by midnight tomorrow night. And so if that happens, if any one of those states does get called by midnight, the networks and the Associated Press, they may not say Biden has won officially, to the extent that media calls are official, because Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are going to get counted later. But I think we know I think it's very safe to say Biden's going to win Wisconsin, and Michigan. And if he picks up any one of those other states, plus Wisconsin, Michigan, that's it. That's over. It's hard to believe Biden would win one of those redder southeastern states and not win Wisconsin and Michigan. So I don't give you that prediction with the same level of confidence as my basic prediction that Biden's going to win, but I will consider that one of my predictions. I'm going to shift over to the Senate, and the Senate, data wise, is even tougher. We have a lot of national polling, and we have a pretty healthy amount of presidential state level polling, and we just have a lot less of it on the Senate map. Some states a little better than others, but it looks like Colorado, Arizona, and Maine are pretty safe to call. Arizona's tightened a little bit. Maine is tightened a little bit, but you got ranked choice voting in Maine, and that Green Party candidate who has been polling halfway decently, those votes are likely to go into Gideon's camp. So I feel pretty confident that they're going to get those three, and also confident that Alabama will go against Doug Jones, and that would need Democrats would need one more after that. And the most obvious candidates are North Carolina and Iowa. And at this juncture, because that Iowa race has tightened more to the point where Ernst, you could argue, is a little bit ahead. Although I did my own average of the polls that were posted at 538, because there are more polls there posted than at Real Clear Politics. And if I look at all the ones that were posted since, I think it was October 21, you get Teresa Greenfield up by 0.36 percentage points. And we don't have a ton of polls that have had multiple surveys in the past 2 weeks, but there are two. Insider Advantage, which is known as being a right-leaning poll operation, they show a big swing to Ernst, and Emerson shows a big swing to Greenfield. So I think it's, some of the flashier polls, Des Moines Register, New York Times, Quinnipiac, they were showing good numbers for Ernst. That's making a lot of folks say, looks like Ernst has the hot hand, and that could well be. But taking the totality of the data that's out there, it still seems like Greenfield can hang on. I'm a bit more confident in Cunningham in North Carolina. He's sagged a little bit since the Sexting affair, but still was around 3 points last I checked. So that still seems pretty good to me. So I think Democrats will get at least the 50. I will go as far as and predict Greenfield and Iowa too, and say my prediction will be minimum 50. Well, actually, let me go beyond the 51. Can Democrats go get anything else beyond that? And if you get into anything else beyond those five, you are almost certainly talking about states where Trump's going to win, with the exception of Georgia. Georgia is one where Biden could win. Georgia is a state where both John Ossoff in the full-term race and Raphael Warnock in the special race with the top two element, they both need to clear 50% tomorrow if they are to avoid a runoff. There's multiple candidates in the Warnock race. There's a libertarian in the Georgia Senate race, in the Ossoff-Purdue race. So I'm inclined to believe both will go to runoffs. Now, if Biden did win Georgia, Biden could win Georgia with less than 50%. There's no runoff element there. So I think it's probably more likely Biden wins Georgia a little under 50, and then Ossoff not being carried over 50. If Biden did clear 50, there's enough of a blue wave there, then maybe that helps Ossoff to clear that 50. But I'm going to say that those go to runoffs. After that, you're talking states that Biden's probably going to lose: South Carolina, Texas, Kansas, Alaska, Montana. Excuse me if I'm forgetting one as I do this stream of consciously. And I have a hard time seeing a good deal of ticket splitting with a Trump voter voting for a Democratic Senate candidate. I mean, there'll probably be some. I mean, and all these people running, they're all running as bipartisan problem solvers. They're not running hard left campaigns. They're aware they have to appeal to right leaning voters. And some are more suited to it than others. Barbara Bulley is a former Republican. MJ Hagar, I believe, was Republican once. And Steve Bullock in Montana is governor, has won statewide before. And then you have Al Gross in Alaska, who is nominally independent, although there'll be a D next to his name. And he's trying to trade on his independence as much as he can. So possible candidates in that space can get the ticket splitting. And Jamie Harrison in South Carolina obviously has run a very close race, and he has to be getting some Trump voter support, or so wouldn't be as close as it is in polling. But he seems to know that he needs to get some of those Trump voters to vote for Bill Bledsoe, the Constitution Party candidate, because he's running ads putting his name out there. So that's his way to try to sneak in with a plurality of the vote. And so when I look at all that, I am, as optimistic a guy as I am, the only one I feel comfortable saying could actually pull that off is Bullock, being a guy with a proven record of winning statewide. And even that feels a bit of a stretch call, because there's a good deal of polling with him slightly behind, although a couple of polls that came out recently had him up by one. But he's won statewide before. John Tester's won statewide before. There's some experience with that in Montana. So I think Bullock could pull it out. I'm not ready to go there for anybody else yet. So I think that leaves Democrats with 52, with some question marks in the two Georgia races as we wait what would happen in January. So that's my thinking, the logic behind what I have. I'm just going to check out what's in the live chat. Forgive me for not looking at it as I was yabbering. One of my pessimistic pals, Brian Green, Iowa and Maine 2 will be red. Pennsylvania scares me. I think it'll be red as well. I understand everyone's hesitation on these fronts, but I would feel pretty confident about Pennsylvania here. Maine 2 is one that, Trump won pretty handily 4 years ago. He won that by 10.3 percentage points. So I sort of understand look, I mean, Maine was 10.3, Iowa was 9.4, and Texas was 9. I mean, these are the biggest reach areas that Biden is gunning for here. And in Iowa was a state that Obama won 4 years prior to that. So big swings can happen. You can make up 9-10 points election to election. It's not common, but it's possible. It did happen there. And I said Texas had a 7-point percentage point margin swing from 2012 to 2016. I think there's enough polling in Maine, enough of a Democratic groundswell in Maine. This is a state that Obama won twice, has a Democratic governor now. And the Maine 2 congressperson is a Democrat as well. So I think that there's a lot more going in Biden's favor there. Another comment, really curious if the shy voter claim pans out. I'm not a big believer in the shy Trump theory. I think there's been a lot of articles and analysis to that effect. I mean, there could be some, but how much of that is net shy Trump? There could be shy Biden, as I think I mentioned on a previous episode here. One friend of mine in Iowa told me that it's possible there are women in rural Iowa that are afraid to talk to pollsters about who they're voting for because their family members might overhear them. And so, how much of this gets negated by each other? How much of it is even that big in the first place? It will be interesting to see if pollsters overcorrected their sampling to try to account for non-college whites. Not that I think all of the quote unquote error is because of weighting issues. I think it's just very possible that there were turnout shifts that pollsters can't easily predict. We had a lot of big Democratic drop-offs from 2012 to 2016 in Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa. If a big chunk of an electorate decides not to show up, that's hard for a poll to predict. That's more than just taking the data. That's making some qualitative decisions on what to do with that data. And that's why I think, some mistakes can happen and why we might get some shifts from the polling baseline tomorrow. Lets more people vote if they aren't working or in college. Good for Dems. I just think there's been a general ease of voting because of the push of early voting, and that's not all good for Dems. I mean, there are Republican states that have been mail voting for a long time, like Arizona. There are plenty of people who are elderly, who are right leaning, and like to vote by mail because it's convenient. So it's not that I think that mail voting is inherently good for Democrats. I just think this is a good Democratic year. There's a general wind in the Democrats' direction. And so the more and more voters you're scooping up when those dynamics are in your favor is going to augment what was already a favorable dynamic for you. There very well could be other years where Republicans, I mean, if Republicans stop trashing mail vote voting and encouraging their own voters to use it, that could very well become, a wash in future elections. Well, I think that does it for questions in the live chat comments. Thank you all for taking part and being part of this discussion. We'll see. I depending on how tomorrow night goes, I might pop in for a live stream later in the evening. I don't want to bore you with, watching me for hours and hours on end when you get folks on TV who have access to a lot more data than I will at my fingertips. But don't be surprised if there's a pop in, later on as we see how things go along. If you like this, please subscribe. If you want to support this financially, patreon.com/BillShare, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.